So a new Batman animated series just dropped August 1st on Amazon Prime, and it is absolutely amazing. I hadn't even heard that a new Batman was being made, to be honest with you. I went to Amazon Prime to watch a show called Tulsa King, and the first result was for a 2024 series called Caped Crusader. Let me tell you, I haven't clicked on something so fast in years. See, I grew up on Batman. He's always been one of my favorite superheroes, DC or Marvel. But in a lot of the Batman cartoons and movies that have come out, the character and the city of Gotham itself are toned down severely to be more suitable for young audiences. Well, aside from some of those DC movies, like Flashpoint Paradox. The Caped Crusader is a return to the real character of Batman, the billionaire playboy who doubles as a violent masked vigilante when the sun goes down. And man, does it feel good to watch. Before we get too far, I am obligated to warn you that this video will contain spoilers for the show. And considering how awesome it is, I'd hate to be the one to ruin the experience for you. So if you haven't seen this show yet, I'd advise you to come back here once you do. If you need to be sold any more on the show before watching it, I should add that the voice acting, animation, and soundtrack are all top-notch. Just everything you could ask for in an animated show. If you're still watching at this point, I think it's safe to assume you don't care about spoilers. So I'm gonna stop yapping about that and start yapping about the show itself. One of the first things I noticed when I clicked on this show is that it is most definitely not made for kids. It contains alcohol and drug use, profanity, and violence, which immediately made me think of those DC movies like Flashpoint. I and a friend of mine, Tenbond, are always talking about how the DC animated movies were the best thing the company has made, and how we wish DC never went the Marvel route and toned down their characters and storylines to appeal to the masses. If you need examples of this, look no further than the Justice League movie from a few years back. The film never lets you forget that everything is going to work out. It gives you the feeling that the superheroes are in control even when they clearly aren't. And that, in my opinion, violates the spirit of what DC Comics are supposed to be. DC Comics, especially the Batman ones, are supposed to be dark. It's what distinguishes them from Marvel Comics, especially considering there aren't very many differences between characters on either side. Flash is Quicksilver, Superman is Captain Marvel, Batman is basically Iron Man. If DC sacrifices the tone that distinguishes these characters, what is really left? When they tried to inject Marvel-tier humor into DC movies and shows, the difference between these two publishing companies essentially becomes about which character design you like most. And that, my friends, is what makes this Caped Crusader show seem so promising to me. It's a return to form after years of DC trying to emulate the success of Marvel, and failing because they betrayed their original creative vision in the process. Batman was always meant to be serious. There are, of course, comedic moments and characters like the Joker, who never take anything serious, but the man Bruce Wayne himself has always been a take-no-shit kind of guy, especially when he dons the Batsuit. He's not afraid to dangle people off buildings, threaten them, beat the hell out of them. But this new Batman actually takes that to the next level, even going as far as to hit people with the Batmobile, as seen at the end of episode 1. Now, I know you might be thinking right now, that sounds a little too violent for Batman. You might think, is this Batman killing people? Well, fret not. The answer to that question is no. Thanks to this show being animated, there is a lot more creative freedom on the part of the showrunners. Batman can do things like whack people with his car, hang people upside down for extended periods of time, and even fight ghosts without ruining your suspension of disbelief. So, needless to say, this Batman is the Batman, much like his 2022 counterpart. This is the character that everyone fell in love with back when he was first created. the guy that brought DC so much success apart from Superman. And more than that, it seems like this show is taking a slight departure from the story that a lot of the previous Batman shows and movies have gone with. This Batman, at least at the start of the show, is not yet well known in Gotham. He's still a legend, to the point that even Gordon and Barbara don't think that he exists, equating him to Santa Claus. This, of course, quickly changes when, as I mentioned before, Batman hits a couple of mobsters with the Batmobile and saves Gordon's daughter in the process. This is unique to me, as the only other time I can think of where we've been shown the rise of Batman is the Nolan trilogy. And even in those movies, he goes from a nobody to a bona fide vigilante in the blink of an eye. I have high hopes for this show. It seems our starting point in Caped Crusader is very similar to that of Robert Pattinson's Batman from the 2022 movie, which is probably not a coincidence, considering creator Matt Reeves is on the team for this show as an executive producer. Similar to Reeves' Batman, this Caped Crusader goes back to the character's roots as a detective. He collects evidence, tracks down criminals. He even outsmarts the police by planting bugs and listening in on their conversations and interrogations. From the top, Bruce has all the super high-tech devices and vehicles, and aside from his reputation, he's essentially a fully fledged Batman. I really like this direction the creators are going. Of course, it's cool to see Batman on top of Gotham, feared by criminals and begrudgingly respected by police. But personally, I think it's cooler to see him make a name for himself. Now, one of the changes to the Batman storyline that I'm really liking is how Harvey Dent is most definitely a degenerate before he ever becomes Two-Face. He's a slimy district attorney who does whatever he can to be elected mayor. This isn't Gotham's White Knight, like in Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. This guy is a scumbag from the start. And I think that's going to go a long way to making his transition into Two-Face more believable. Another major character from the comics that is being done exceptionally well is Catwoman. In the 2022 movie, Catwoman was more of an accomplice to Batman, helping him do what needed to be done. But in this show, she is exactly what she was originally meant to be, a criminal who challenges Batman. She's acrobatic, sassy, flirtatious, and she uses her charm to manipulate Batman into letting his guard down. This is, in short, a perfect depiction of Catwoman. Something else that's landing really well in this show is that the violence is not just guys throwing punches. It's gunfights, explosions, electrocutions, even sword fights as we see in episode 2. This show is not afraid to get bloody, not afraid to kill off characters when necessary. And that's a breath of fresh air after so many superhero shows where either nothing ultimately happens to anybody, or extreme violence happens just for the sake of shock value. Now, with all that glazing out of the way, let's move on to a couple of criticisms I have of the show, of which there are not many. Firstly, I have no idea why the creators decided to gender swap Penguin. It's not too big of a deal because Penguin was never a major antagonist to worry about, but it is a questionable decision that I can see no real reason for other than just doing it. Changes like this, I feel, are just disrespectful to the source material, because they're completely pointless. On a similar note, I don't know why Commissioner Gordon was race swapped. I'm assuming it has to do with the 2022 movie. But like I said, these changes aren't a big deal. They don't detract from the story or characters at all. They mostly just beg the question of why the creators made those changes. And that's about it. I can't really think of anything else about this show to criticize. And not for lack of trying. This show really is that good. I'm loving how we're getting origin stories for a lot of the main villains, and even a couple of characters I've never seen before that are equally as fun to watch. Of all the villain origin stories though, none so far have been as good as Harley Quinn. Granted, we weren't actually given an origin story, but the reveal of her character is definitely shocking. I won't say any more on that note, in case anyone still watching hasn't seen the show yet. Speaking of origins, it seems that Batman's story has been slightly retconned to match his comic book counterpart. Of course, his parents are still killed and he becomes Batman, but this time it's a decision that he makes as a child and does all by himself. There is no league to train him in this version of the story, which makes his feats that much more impressive. With that aside, I want to touch on a couple more little things about the show that I think will sell you on it, if you aren't already. First and foremost, this show's intro is great. It's in black and white, and in combination with the music, it gives the show a classical feel to it, like some noir detective film from back in the day. Which is interesting, considering that's the same praise people gave Matt Reeves' Batman movie. This show feels like a love letter to all things Batman. From including classic villains like Harley Quinn and Penguin, to seemingly nods to 2000s era films like Batman vs. Dracula, and even games like the Arkham series, this show covers every base. There's people with superpowers, advanced technology, and even supernatural beings. It's honestly a breath of fresh air to see a new comic book show stick to the origins of a character so well. You can tell that the creators are real fans of Batman, and they're doing their best to capture the spirit of the character in this show. Honestly, it kind of sucks that I found this show so soon, because after binging all of it in a day, I really can't wait for the second season to come out. I'll be waiting a while for that. I'll be making a couple more videos on this show to talk about specifics in the episodes and speculate about what the future might hold for the series. But that's it for today. What did you think of Caped Crusader? Do you think it's up to par with the classic Batman shows it's inevitably going to be compared to? Leave your thoughts below, and consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel if you want to see more like it. Thank you so much for watching, and take it easy.